Poor Things is the newest film by director Yorgos Lanthimos. This is the same director as The Favorite, which was nominated for and won a bunch of Oscars. This is the same director as The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is a movie I really love that people hate for some reason. Not a lot, but the people who don't like it seem to really not like it. The Lobster, which I also love. Dogtooth, which I also really love. This newest film, Poor Things, I've only seen it once, but it might honestly be my favorite of his films. I have been thinking about it a lot since I saw it about a week ago. I really want more people to see it because it is an incredible, challenging, but satisfying and meaningful experience. Essentially, a spoiler discussion, Willem Dafoe plays a deformed genius surgeon. It's set in Victorian London, and he is a surgeon that experiments a lot and does crazy sort of mad scientist things. He combines different animals together, and the way that it works in this film is you just accept it as a matter-of-fact thing, because the effects work going into making it look like these pug head, duck body, or like pig head, other animal body monsters looks really convincing. The entire film is so comedic and intentionally absurdist that there's no point in trying to question the logic and ask questions about how they digest food or how they make certain noises and why, do they have both vocal cords of both animals? It's not worth asking those questions because the movie is well aware of how absurd it is. It is operating on a different plane of logic, on a different plane of existence. It is its own universe that it is presenting. And this is further exemplified by how intentionally stylized the sets and especially the skies in this film are. There's a lot of beautiful skies in this movie, and, it might seem too lucky for real photography, but it wasn't real photography. They did some kind of effects work. It kind of seemed like ink in water, but I don't think that's what it was, but that's what it reminded me of. And it's such an incredibly beautiful and distinct and artful way of showing the universe of this film that it's just a joy to look at, and it sticks in your mind, and it paints a lovely picture. Immediately from the first shot of this film, it's incredibly visually striking. The use of color in this film is also incredible. There's some black and white scenes, but also when there is color, it's very vibrant. Each setting, each chapter, each sequence has a unique color palette that it brings that makes it visually distinct from the previous one. Another thing apparent from the moment that it enters the film is how incredible the score is. Immediately from its first existence, just appearing in the film for the first time, I was like, holy shit, this is a new sound that I haven't heard before, and it works for the film, and it sounds great. It's well composed. It fits like a puzzle piece. Essentially, they wind up making a sound that reminds me of harp strings, but has the same sort of pitch twang that you would expect to find on an acoustic guitar or even a slide guitar. The way that it's written is so smart because the root notes always stay consistent, not having that variable pitch. But then the top notes, the twang, like, it enforces this kind of like almost drunk feeling, and you know what the notes are supposed to be. Because of the root note staying consistent, it informs your brain on what notes are supposed to be playing in the top. Essentially written in a way where it's giving you clues that there are quote-unquote wrong notes that kind of slide in to correct themselves. And it works, and it's very interesting, and it creates something new, and it fits with the visuals, it fits with the story, it fits with everything. Because it's so distinct. I have not searched up the Poor Things soundtrack at all. I saw the movie once, like a week ago, and I remember how the soundtrack goes. That's a great thing to experience in a movie, where it's infectious in a positive way that's not annoying. I'm just constantly appreciating how the soundtrack was used and how it was composed. That's how distinct it is. That's how great it is. Incredible score. Very impressive. I hope that this wins at the Oscars. It does deal with some very disturbing content concepts, and it does present things in a very disturbing way in terms of tone. Willem Dafoe takes a woman who committed a pregnant woman, finds her fresh body, takes the surviving baby's brain, and puts it in the dead woman's skull. The movie is essentially following Emma Stone playing this adult-bodied woman with a baby brain. So a child in an adult's body. A huge chunk of the movie is dedicated towards her discovering sex and being addicted to it, but also seeing the world through the eyes of a child. And you see her learning as the movie goes on. You can see her growing up, I guess, mentally, but not physically. It's like a coming of age story, but only based on what she says and the way she talks. It's very controversial in concept, but unlike a lot of other movies that have tried to explore sexuality, there's no other movie like this. There's no other story like this. I guess it's based on a book. Well, there's no other screenplay like this that I can think of. There's other films that have tried to explore sexuality that have done it in a way that seems pornographic or perverted. Whereas even though there's a lot of sex in this movie and there's a lot of nudity in this movie and it's very explicit, it feels so much more purposeful and meaningful. It feels like there's a great narrative and emotional excuse to explore these ideas, despite it being a male director and being pretty sexually explicit and sometimes feeling pornographic. It does have a lot of recurring feminist themes that it does wrap the movie up with over the course of the film. What's funny is it kind of explicitly talks about feminist ideas, like literally just saying out loud that there's a certain type of man that feels like they need to control things, and that there's like a male idea of the need to control and see women as property and control women, etc., etc. But the way it's explored in this film, it doesn't feel like some shitty, childish, pandering feminist lecture. It's not a preachy movie. It's a movie where it makes sense for the character to be exploring this and experiencing this. She's seeing the world unfiltered through the eyes of a child. And so she's constantly questioning and challenging ideas that other people in society are already just used to and conditioned to expect. So she'll go to a dinner and just be like, oh, I have to pretend to like this? Like, what's the concept of being polite? She gets essentially addicted to sex and is like, why don't people just do this all the time, sort of thing. She is someone who is experiencing the world without doing so in a way that is socially conscious. It's almost kind of like an extreme autism movie, but it works really well, and it forces the viewers to engage with these subjects and these ideas, but not in a way that feels condescending at all in the slightest. It's done very comedically. It's done very meaningfully. There's a huge range of emotions in this film, and it hits each of them so well. So much of it is so satirical and ironic, and when it needs to be sad and when it needs to bring things back to a deeper, more meaningful message, it does so without tripping over itself. It does so without falling flat on its face. Speaking of the feminist themes, Black Christmas, 2019. I watched the trilogy for the podcast. Sardonicast that I do with Alex from I Ate Everything. Black Christmas 2019 is the most immature, baby-brained attempt at feminist conversation that I've maybe ever seen in any movie. It is endlessly preachy. It doesn't serve any other purpose but to preach. It is literally just an entire seminar. The way that they present ideas in the film, it gives the impression that they don't even understand what reality is. They don't know how the world works. They are in some insanely small bubble, and for them to even release that, they have to be absolutely demented and not understand anything about society or genders. It comes from a completely unempathetic perspective. Terrible, terrible, terrible movie, but very funny because of how bad it is. There are some of the same messages or some of the same ideas in Poor Things, but just handled in a much more intelligent, respectful, meaningful, artful way. Black Christmas is a film that essentially says men want to control everything and men are trying to control all women to do blah, 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 blah. This film touches on those ideas and it raises questions, and it has a character experience, real but also not real, also very absurdist situations, and still manages to explore those same ideas and concepts, but just not make it seem like whoever wrote it was a child. It feels like whoever wrote this, which I guess Yorgos and whoever wrote the book, it feels like they're functioning, intelligent adults capable of having conversations about societal issues. And I'm talking a lot about these societal issues within the context of this movie. That's not even really the bulk of the movie. It's not a preachy movie in the slightest. It just has themes, and it delivers those themes incredibly well. I haven't even gotten to like almost anything in my notes. I've just been talking from memory. I've just been endlessly talking about this movie. I've been thinking about it and engaging with it and excited to talk about it. It's so incredible, and it's in theaters right now, so please, everybody watch it. Easily top 3 of the year. Probably top 2. It might be my favorite movie of the year, honestly. I want to see it again the soonest. It might be better than Zone of Interest for me. Maybe. So in Yorgos Lanthimos' previous film, The Favorite, he used some fisheye lenses, some very interesting perspective, warped kind of feeling lenses, only in a couple shots throughout the movie. I think it was like 4 shots, and they were transitionary. I remember like a horse carriage scene and the camera was moving and, you know, just kind of this weird, almost unfitting. And I love The Favorite. It's a great movie, but the experimentation with those lenses, I'm not sure matched with the entire aesthetic of the film, because other than those few shots, it's a movie where it would benefit you to forget about the fact that you're watching a movie. It's a movie that isn't so style heavy and aggressively style heavy that it wouldn't feel distracting. So I wasn't sure about that choice in The Favorite, but in this film, it is so frequent, and the set design and use of color and every other aspect of the film is also so aggressively stylized that whenever we see the weird perspective angles and the fisheye lenses and all of these incredibly striking choices for the visual style of this movie, it works with the film. It doesn't feel conflicting. The entire movie just feels like, oh my God, this feels like you're drunk or something. It feels like you're high. It feels like a trip. It's disorienting, but in a good way. Despite it being a period piece, it is so heavily stylized that it doesn't take away from it, unlike maybe The Favorite. I have to watch it for a second time to see if I really still find that to be a criticism. But I remember watching The Favorite and being like, why does this look like a skateboard video? Just like at random points in the movie, and it wasn't consistent. So that, yeah, I don't know. It was confusing, but incredible cinematography overall. There are transitionary sequences, title sequences that bring in each chapter of the film, and they essentially create a moving painting, different imaginative idea of the character kind of like falling or riding on like an ocean of like a brain and like a whale and teeth, almost like some weird art piece photography just for these title sequences. And the font choice of the movie is the same font as R.M. Brown's thumbnails. Not that he invented that. I know there's some young people that think he did, but he did not invent that style. R.M. Brown, great channel. Everybody check that out. A lot of really extreme angles in this film. Some really great editing choices as well. There was a soft, slow fade, her sleeping on a bed and it fading into a shot of a map. And as her head fades out of one spot on the screen, a finger just abruptly enters the frame right where her head was. And just, whoosh, I just felt excited about that editing choice. I was like, holy crap, I'm caught off guard by something. And then I started thinking about that thematically. And I'm like, okay, well, depending on how you define her as a person, like, is she the mom or the baby or both? She's kind of like self-harming, or there's attention paid to her head, like the mind, the skull, right? I don't know. There's more things to think about. I don't know how intentional that shot was visually towards trying to get at deeper ideas in the film. All I know is that it worked super well for me visually, artistically, pacing, editing, sound. It was a great choice, and the timing of it was just so well refined. You could tell that someone really cared in the editing process for this film. Nothing felt like it lingered on for too long. Everything felt super cohesive and like it was a perfectly fitting piece of a greater whole project. Mark Ruffalo is in this movie. I'm usually not really excited to see him in anything. Not that I hate him, but he's never really wowed me, and he's never been a great barometer for whether or not a movie is good. He's appeared in some great movies. He was in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, one of the best movies ever, but he was also like the Hulk. This movie might be my favorite performance from him. Maybe I haven't seen his best performance, but this would maybe be worth an Oscar nomination. He did a fucking fantastic job. He was very fun to watch, very comedic performance. It felt like a character that was entirely distinct from other characters that he's played. Great job, Mark Ruffalo. The structure of this story is so interesting, and it feels like a fairy tale adventure. It feels like kind of a Pinocchio type movie. She travels to different places and learns different things along the way, meets different characters. But this is debatably more disturbing, more dark, definitely a lot better written than Pinocchio. Emma Stone's performance is fantastic. I love what she did with this character. I love how she portrayed the character. It never felt like it was in poor taste, like an offensive caricature of like a mentally disabled person or anything. She did a really thoughtful job despite the character being portrayed in such a comedic and ironic way. Despite a lot of it being for laughs, it never felt misplaced. It never felt cringe. There's a great line where she says, "I must go punch that baby." That was a good part. I want to know what the hell was up with Willem Dafoe vomiting bubbles, like, and making like a frog noise. That was interesting. That happened like 2 or 3 times. The style of this movie feels like if you mixed Terry Gilliam and Lars von Trier. I was reminded of both of them, but it's still something unique. It is still not like, oh, you're just trying to be those things. It just reminded me of those things in a good way. It was a perfect blend while still retaining Lanthimos and his style. One of my favorite scenes is Mark Ruffalo trying to murder a lady. That's a fantastic scene. Very memorable, very comedic, lots of genuine laughs. Honestly, just an entire movie of being in awe at what they're presenting in a very positive and a very exciting way. I love watching films where I'm actively engaged. I don't have to force myself to pay attention to it. I am just so impressed and stimulated by the thought and detail and passion and coordination and planning that went into this film that it's impossible to look away. It's impossible to think of other things while I'm watching the film. It earns your attention and was absolutely captivating throughout. I do want to see it again. I honestly can't think of anything that I don't like about it. I'm trying to think of a single gripe or a single issue that I had, and I don't think I have one. There are many different characters in this film. They are all very memorable. They are all very fun to watch. They all serve a unique purpose in the story and tie things together in a meaningful way. I love that Christopher Abbott was in this movie. He's kind of been underrated in my mind for a while. He did a film called James White that nobody saw, and it was really good, and he starred in it. He's been getting roles in smaller kind of like indie festival movies for a while, and I'm hoping that this is what puts him on the map and gets him into bigger projects, because I've always really enjoyed his work. He is great in this film as well. Very intimidating, very scary character. Just every concept and personality that is explored in this film, it doesn't feel hollow. It doesn't feel obligatory. It feels like it's included for some greater purpose from a unique passion from the creators of this film. The makeup was also incredible. Basically, every filmmaking element that you can name is one where clearly talented people were involved. It's really impressive how Yorgos manages to find all of this talent, or I guess casting, production managers, etc. The people that he works with manage to find all of this talent. Everybody is working their hardest. Everybody is putting their soul into the project and believes in it. It's just a great thing to see. It is probably the best movie you could see in theaters right now. There is nothing else like it. It is different, but not for the sake of being different. It is weird, not just to be weird. It is not a Quentin Dupieux film. This is something that actually holds some emotional resonance. Every choice that is made in this film is done so in an intelligent and useful way. So I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. I just want to see it again. It's like in my mind right now, and I want to make time to see it again because it is just fucking incredible. Love this movie. Couldn't recommend it enough. Probably my favorite of the year, honestly. The fact that I could remember the score on pitch, the exact score after only seeing the movie once, like that's such a good sign of like a really sticky movie. There's a stickiness. They have a sticky quality, and I go, oh yeah, that's sticky. Cameo.com/ADUM. I hear you're turning 25. You're probably a pedophile. I do birthdays. I do weddings. I do funerals. I do anniversaries. Dear Adam, please roast my husband. I do not love them anymore. Their favorite film is Call Me By Your Name. Call Me By Your Name, more like Call Me By Your Gay. Tell me their interests so I can make it personal. George Orwell, more like George Snorwell. well, I will say anything that is not against terms of service. Hey, your friend wanted me to let you know you're just bad. Everybody's been trying to tell you, and nobody's really found the words to say it. You're just bad. And you're probably a pedophile. I will roast the shit out of your grandma. I can even give them the finger. That's bad. Guarantee them that this Christmas, the turkey will not be the only roast.